Our final look at the Washington Commanders during OTAs, and it was easily the most eventful practice of them all, for some good and for some not so good reasons. We dive into the biggest takeaways from Wednesday's practice right now on the Locked On Commanders podcast.
Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Commanders fans, to the Locked On Commanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are your daily podcast covering the Washington Commanders. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, and we thank those of you joining us live right now on YouTube. We thank you all for making us your first listener, your first view of the day. I am David Harrison, covering your Commanders for Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation, and my co-host right here next to me, Chris Russell, the Rooster, one half of the Russell and Medhurst show on the Team 980. You can find Chris and Pete there Monday through Friday, 3 to 7 p.m. Eastern, or anytime along with this show on the Audacy app. When we are not there and we are not here, we are on Twitter at DHarrison82, at RussellMania621, and at LO Commanders.
Harrison, thanks again, guys, for making us your first view or your first listen of the day. As David mentioned, we are live as we record this from the Inova Sports Performance Center in Ashburn, Virginia. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at Blue Nile. Make your moments sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com. And Locked On Commanders listeners and viewers can get $50 off of a purchase of $500 or more. This podcast exclusive includes engagement rings. Use the code Locked On at checkout. And as we mentioned, we just watched our, third overall OTA session that you've been at, second for me. And yes, we will get to all the Jack Del Rio stuff in a little bit, boys and girls. But we first start out with what was the play, and not for a good reason, of the practice. David, both you and I were probably about 20, 25 yards maybe away from it. It was kind of right in our view. Carson Wentz unloaded a pass. It was intended for Dyami Brown and safety Jeremy Reaves, who has been a favorite of Ron Rivera and this coaching staff, especially back to 2020. He absolutely leveled Dyami Brown, and Dyami Brown was down on the ground, for a good couple of minutes, eventually did get up, walk off with help, with assistant, and boy, was Ron Rivera. I'll say this, and I checked with others, that was by far the maddest I've seen Ron Rivera on any one thing, on any issue. He unloaded not only on Jeremy Reaves, but on his entire team.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's, one thing for a player at the experience level, Jeremy Reaves, he knows he messed up, and as soon as the hit came through, I mean, there was an audible groan from, the sideline where the media members were, like, you're not supposed to necessarily have an emotional reaction, but sometimes there are things that happen on the field that just, you can't, you're human beings, right? You kind of have to, it's just kind of a natural thing, but it's also family day, right? So there's family members of these players. And I don't know if Dyami's family was in attendance or Jeremy specifically, but there's family members out there and they understand kind of the risk that's what's going on with their family member who's playing or coaching this game and all those things. But you still don't like to see those kinds of things happen. And immediately, as soon as the hit was done, Jeremy, before he even got up off the ground, he was already kind of cursing himself out and already knew he had messed up. Like you said, Ron Rivera just immediately just absolutely infuriated. You could have heard, like, outside of Ron Rivera's voice, if you'd have coughed, it'd have been like back in COVID days and you were in the middle of the supermarket, like you could hear Ron Rivera's words clear as day. Nobody was making a noise. Nobody would dare move in that moment, including observers. It was a very intense moment. Good to see Dyami, eventually walk off the field. Trainers were with him, but he wasn't, being carried, no carts, no nothing like that. So good to hear that. And then good to hear from Ron afterwards, say that it seems like he avoided kind of the worst of what could have happened.
Now, you always still have to, even though Ron did not mention possible concussion, you still have to worry about that, of course, and he'll be evaluated for everything. We don't know if we'll see Dyami Brown next week at the veteran minicamp, but this was important to me for a couple of reasons. Number one, David, I would say, they're already, as we know, short Terry McLaurin. We don't think he'll actually participate on the field next week, but I'm guessing he'll be there, just because Terry's that kind of guy. And they were without Curtis Samuel. So it hurts you. That's the first major team period. They had done a red zone team period, but that was the first of two main team periods that they do in each one of these practices. And when you're already short Terry, when you're already short Curtis, it does put you in a bind of not being able to, again, test out defensive backs, test out your wide receiver group, see what kind of depth you have, get a good feel for the quarterback, so on and so forth. That's number one. The injuries, of course, you just can't do that, right? And here's the one problem, and this is a problem in general, I think, with football, right? Jeremy Reaves trying to make this roster, right? Now, that's one way to hurt yourself making the roster, but it's also like in a football player's mind, I think, it's hard in that moment to say, oh, no, I got to back up. Now, Ron's saying, listen, we're going to see that he was there. And true, they probably will, right? The eye in the sky doesn't lie. And they'll see that he was in position to make that play. But it's hard to do that in a visceral moment like that. And so to some degree, I feel bad for Jeremy. He's got to do better. He's got to know more. But to some degree, I feel bad for him because he's a kid trying to make a play and trying to make, an impression, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, I mean, the intention is good. You know what I mean? The spirit of what happened is, like you said, Jeremy Reaves trying to make a play on the ball. That's what his coaches, that's what DB coach Chris Harris would want him to do. It's just in this circumstance, and that's kind of the difficult part about this. We've talked about this before. This is why defenses tend to kind of get off to slower starts in the regular season, because once week one of the regular season, you have preseason, but there's not a whole lot of exposure. And even then, kind of the brotherhood of just being football players, you don't want to go, I wouldn't say 100%, but, you're going about 90, 95% for the most part. So once you get to the regular season, that's really the first time you're getting to unleash everything. And the entire buildup, you're having to, maybe I don't hit, maybe I don't come in here. And like you mentioned, they kind of took a special teams period, let everybody kind of cool off, recollect themselves, gather up the coaches. I'm sure, had some conversations how they wanted to proceed. And you kind of noticed right off the bat that like people were playing off, I mean, defenders, especially, they weren't crashing down as intensely as they would now. As the team periods went on, I don't know if it's just the natural order of things or someone said something, but they did start trying, firing in there a little bit more. And that led to another really good play. But Chris, it also is just kind of indicative of a little bit of the struggles that Carson Wentz had on Wednesday.
Absolutely. And Carson Wentz threw that pass, of course, to Dyami Brown, and that's part of, his struggles on the day. He may have led him a little bit too far into the hole. It certainly wasn't a floated pass, but it may not have been an accurate pass. And again, it's hard for us to say when we get one live look at it, no benefit of the replay, nothing. They'll be able to see a replay. They'll be able to see if Carson Wentz let him. But that's the way it appeared, I think, in both of our eyes, right? And like you said, that kind of leads us into the conversation about Carson Wentz. If Ron Rivera was as upset about the Dyami Brown Jeremy Reaves hit, he's not going to be as upset about Carson Wentz's day, David, but the tape is going to be upset. Maybe Ken Zampese, maybe Scott Turner, maybe even Ron Rivera are going to be a little upset about what they saw, because it started with an early interception on a sideline out. You noticed this, I think, first to me, that he was just maybe just a hair late on a sideline out pass where the zip and the velocity appeared there, but the decision, the timing has got to be there. And Kendall Fuller picked it off. That's Kendall Fuller's second interception in the three practices we've been able to see as media. And then he also had another interception over the middle that Derek Forrest got a hand in, broke up. Again, may have been off on the trajectory of the pass, and then it ultimately wound up in Cole Holcomb's hands.
Yeah, absolutely. Carson Wentz, not the greatest day from Carson. We'll talk a little bit more about that as well here in a minute. But we're also going to talk about one quarterback that did shine in Wednesday's practice, and that's Taylor Heinicke, who easily came away, I think, as the best passer on the field in this final OTA look at the Washington Commanders. We're going to share those observations coming up. But first, at BlueNile.com, you can celebrate all of life's special moments, from creating the custom engagement ring of her dreams to gifting a classic and timeless jewelry piece, all at prices you won't find at a traditional jeweler. Whether you're ready to pop the question or you're celebrating a milestone moment, find jewelry as unique as her with the modern convenience of online shopping at BlueNile.com. Build the engagement ring of her dreams or celebrate life's special moments with fine jewelry. No matter what you're looking for, Blue Nile has jewelry experts on hand 24/7. Make your moments sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com, and Locked On Commanders listeners Get $50 off purchases of $500 or more. This podcast exclusive includes engagement rings. Just use the code Locked On. That's code Locked On at BlueNile.com. Plus, every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. So shop stress-free and find your forever piece. Go to BlueNile.com today.
All right, thanks again, Locked On Commanders fans, for making us your first listen and or your first view of the day. Again, we are coming to you from the Inova Sports Performance Center, the headquarters, the team headquarters for the Washington Commanders. David Harrison, I'm Chris Russell. We have an important favor to ask you guys. We put together a survey so we can learn more about listeners and viewers like yourself, and so that we can make your favorite Locked On podcast even better. Hopefully, Locked On Commanders is your favorite podcast. This is your opportunity to tell us what you like, what you don't like about Locked On Podcast. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey right now to get started. It won't take very long. Everyone that completes a survey can qualify for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Ticketmaster gift cards to take our audience survey. Again, go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey. And thanks for your help. Before we get to Taylor Heinicke, just to finish up on Carson Wentz's rough day, we mentioned the 2 interceptions. There was also a throw that stood out in in my mind, and I'm not sure, what your, I guess, takeaway from it was. I know you saw it, which was a deep bomb, way overthrow in the back of the end zone. Is probably overthrew 15, 20 feet, if not more, maybe. I mean, it was really bad. And I think you pointed out something to me that maybe you could share with the audience about what happened on that particular play. And again, it just added to the tough day for Carson Wentz.
Yeah, I mean, it just not a very clean day. The previous 2 OTA sessions were relatively clean. Still interceptions in each of them as Carson continues to learn the offense, his weapons, and the defense is obviously has a little bit of advantage because, I mean, they've been working against this offense for a year now. But you still want to see things tightened up again. You talk about the throw to Dyami Brown, and without the advantage of replay, don't have 100% vantage point of what happened there, but it certainly does feel like that was probably a little bit more of a dangerous throw than he needed to throw. The Derek Forrest tip pass ended up in the hands of Cole Holcomb. Certainly a play you're not going to want him to make on game day. And then, yeah, that deep ball, not only is it overthrown, I mean, it was so overthrown. I don't remember the receiver's name, but I mean, basically as soon as the receiver caught eye of it in the air, he pulled up because he said, okay, there's no way that's coming down. That thing came down a good 10, 12 yards outside the back end of the end zone. In a lot of stadiums, that's a souvenir for somebody, right, which is very good for fans, but not so good for the team and the scoreboard. But it was also in double coverage. Yeah. You know what I mean? Which is a very bad situation. You have other options on the field. And again, without the total advantage of being able to replay and look at the film and everything like that, but you look at just kind of the numbers of how these things work. If you've got a receiver downfield double covered, you probably had a guy underneath that you could have dumped the ball off to. Now, later on in another team session, we did see Carson kind of stand there, look for the deep shot, eventually checked down to Brian Robinson Jr., the rookie running back, and he was praised for doing so by offensive coordinator Scott Turner. So again, these are the growing pains you're going to go through. It's not nobody's saying, take him off your fantasy football draft board. It's just, this is what happened today. You can't win them all. Nobody can be a star every day.
No. It was a good day for the most part for Taylor Heinicke. Yeah. Now, remember last week we were kind of, I think both of us were down on what we saw to Taylor Heinicke. Yeah, and one of the things that I wanted to see this week when we did that portion of our live show last week was, hey, I wanted to see Taylor Heinicke improve, right? Well, he dialed up similar throw, similar route, similar everything as the one we were just talking about with Wentz, which Wentz way overthrew and again into double coverage. This one was converging double coverage from both rookies, Percy Butler and Christian Holmes, but it was, I think, a safer throw. It looked safer, and it was, more importantly, right on target, right in the hands, right in the breadbasket of receiver Mitchell, Markin Mitchell, who came down with it. Good for him. But could it be considered a dangerous throw? Maybe, but it was a throw that you have to be able to make. And if you're going to score points in this league, you got to be able to make that kind of throw. It was everything the Carson Wentz throw wasn't.
Right, and it was what you would want to see from your starting quarterback. And look, if every Taylor Heinicke deep ball could look like that one, I mean, we might be having a different discussion at this point in time in this camp.
Wait, are you telling me he struggles to throw the deep ball?
He definitely does struggle to throw the deep ball. Yes. And in fact, and
do you know that for sure?
Yes, I know that for sure. I don't even necessarily feel totally bad about it, but when the ball went in the air, I'm going to be honest with you. Part of me said, okay, I'm watching the ball fly through the air. I'm watching Mark and try to get under the ball. I see the two defenders, and I'm kind of wondering, like, is one of them going to come down with it, the defenders, or are they going to pull up because of what happened earlier? And then it landed right in. I mean, it was kind of wobbly, but it wasn't too wobbly. Landed in his breadbasket. I mean, the receiver, he celebrated. He said something to the effect of, "I told you all something." I don't know what he said after that, but he's very excited. It was a very good play, and overall, just an example of really, again, Taylor Heinicke, the best quarterback on Wednesday.
I also had to check to make sure that it was 4 and not 14. 14 being, of course, Sam Howell, 4 being Taylor Heinicke. I had to double check that. That was the first thing I did after I saw the completion of the play. And, because we're not used to, quite honestly, seeing that. One other play I wanted to share with our audience, David, and again, I know we were both watching it at the same time. Nolan Laufenberg, who I think is Babe Laufenberg for Commanders fans, Redskins fans that remember that name. He's Cowboys color, and it's his son. He's like a backup center. He had a terrible snap, and Heinicke was in pistol or gun, and it was way off to Heinicke's left. And Heinicke, to his credit, got it, corralled it, and then tried to flush it, tried to save the play and tried to save disaster, and ultimately just flipped it up in the air and flipped it out of bounds. Now, again, look, maybe it wasn't the perfect thing that you would ideally like him to do, but it saved disaster, basically. It was kind of like one of those smart heads-up plays. So I think, in my mind, he deserves a little credit for that. But it's certainly a good day for Taylor Heinicke. It was not a great day, quite honestly, for Sammis Reyes, who hasn't been out on the practice field. We've had a couple of questions on the YouTube page about Sammis Reyes. Noticed last week he was working out with the injured players off on the side, not in team drills. You've noticed that as well. And now Ron Rivera tells us he's got to get it, and he said it's a minor procedure, but anytime
not
you got to
surgery.
Well, he was very careful about that because of what happened with Curtis Samuel last year, which was a fiasco. And we'll get to Curtis Samuel in a sec. But basically, he's got a screw in his knee that he's got to had to have removed. So Sammis Reyes hasn't been able to work these team reps. Well, David, one thing that I mentioned a couple of weeks ago or last week or whenever it was is I need to see him catch the ball better. And this is a golden opportunity. I like Sammis. This is a golden opportunity for him because you do have Cole Turner and you do have John Bates, yes, but Cole Turner's a 5th-round rookie, and you don't know if you're going to have Logan Thomas, and you have Antonio Gandy Golden being converted from wide receiver to tight end. This is an important time, and I hate for Sammis' sake that this has come up, but it also makes me a lot more worried about the tight end position.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm actually worried about the tight end position. Honestly, like John Bates, Cole Turner, they've looked really good. Now, that 4th, I mean, you are worried a little bit about Logan Thomas, but if Logan can come back, then you feel good about that. And it looks like the team is taking their time. He's in good spirits. He's not. There's no like noticeable limp or aches or pains while he's moving and stretching. So that's all good. With those 3, I'm pretty confident. I like the group they have. But you're right. It's a huge opportunity for Sammis Reyes that he's unfortunately, because of things that really seem to be out of his control, having to miss out on, because then you've got some other guys. There's an undrafted kid here from Arizona State that's putting some good things on film. So I mean, it is a huge opportunity for Reyes. Unfortunately, we haven't had a lot to say about him because there just hasn't been a lot to say about him until today, which isn't very good news.
Hopefully he'll be back on the field for the start of training camp. I don't know if we'll see him next week. And of course you had to get in that Arizona State reference. I like that. The alma mater. Go Herm Edwards. Sorry. All right, guys, coming up, what would a day with the Washington Commanders be without some sort of drama off the field, on the field, whatever? We dive into Coach Jack Del Rio's recent comments and his follow-up statements to us here in the media at the Inova Sports Performance Center in Ashburn. Before we do that, we need to talk about something good. Chewy, chocolatey brownies. Yes, you can see it on your screen from our friends at Built Bar. Don't you just love a chewy chocolatey brownie? Of course you do. What about a caramel brownie with caramel swirl rolled on. Oh, so good. Oh, what if I told you you can have all the chewy, chocolatey deliciousness, easy for me to say, plus 17 grams of protein, and they're low in calories, low in net carbs, and all of that good stuff. You are in luck, my friends, because caramel brownie bars are available right now at built.com. You got to act fast. Again, forget about dessert. Use them as a meal replacement. That's what I did on my way to Ashburn and Commander's practice. I had one for breakfast, and it was delish. The best part is the caramel brownie bars are covered in 100% real, soft, and easy to chew chocolate. Like for real. With Built, you're going to not have to sacrifice tasty for good and healthy. You can have both. So go to built.com right now. Use the promo code LOCKED15, and you're going to get 15% off your order, just like David and I always do, just like so many of our listeners do. Use the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com.
Final segment here on this Wednesday episode of Locked On Commanders podcast, live from Commanders Park, the Nova Sports Performance Center, following the final OTA practice that we get to see in person next week. We've got minicamp, 2, maybe 3 days of minicamp that we'll get to see here in person, and that'll be good to get some consecutive views. What's getting a lot of consecutive views right now, Chris, is Jack Del Rio and his Twitter activity, and today we got a response from him that's getting even more interaction and activity. So first we're going to start off. This whole thing started on Monday. Jack Del Rio, the defense coordinator of the Washington Commanders, tweeting out, quote, "Would love to understand the whole story," which he then put in quotations, "about why the summer of riots, looting, burning, and the destruction of personal property is never discussed, but this is question mark, question mark, question mark, hashtag common sense," end quote. Now, of course, he didn't say it by, specifically, but he's talking about the January 6th insurrection at the Capitol, which, of course, there are hearings that are getting ready to take place.
So, to make this show political, we know that you guys want football coverage, but what are we supposed to do when the defensive coordinator, won't stop tweeting? And remember, this isn't the only time he's tweeted controversial comments. He has 2 weeks ago, he had some weird tweets. He had some controversial tweets. This one takes the cake, though, in my eyes. Basically, David, for those that maybe are not fully aware, basically he's saying that the summer of riots, which followed the George Floyd murder in Minneapolis, which spread all across the country, get too little coverage, too little blame, too little criticism.
Yeah.
Fair. But yet what happened at the Capitol building, 35 miles from where we sit in Washington, D.C., in the nation's capital on January 6th of last year, gets all the credit. So that's basically his point. Now, listen, if Jack would have been okay if he said, look, what happened at the Capitol was not good. What happened in some ways in reflection of the George Floyd homicide, or I should say murder, and what happened elsewhere and what has happened in other instances, like the damage, the violence, the looting, the rioting, that part, both are not good. Because what happened in all of those cases and what happened at the Capitol, and again, I'm not trying to be political, is not good. There was a lot of damage. There were people that were killed. There were people that were hurt. There were police and so on and so forth, right? That's where Jack should have gone. Instead, Jack kind of went off the rails, and ultimately he wound up at the end basically calling what happened at the Capitol building a quote-unquote dust-up, which is where he's going to get in a lot of, I guess, criticism or trouble or something.
Yeah, he was asked, to start the press conference, and everybody expected it. We all knew, even with the Jeremy Reaves incident with Dyami Brown, we all knew that as soon as Jack stepped up to the microphone, and I know he knew it too, that's what the topic of conversation was going to be. And I'll applaud his very first answer he did. He tried to shift it to football and said, that's what I'm here for. That's what I'm focused on. That's what I want to talk about. But, as persistence as media, we tend to be persistent about what we want to talk about. He kept getting questions. Look, at first he kind of kept it, call it above board when you were called. I'm an American. I have the right to my opinion. Coach Rivera was asked about it. Said the same thing. The beautiful part about this country is everybody is allowed to have their own opinions. Nobody in the locker room, at least as of right now, publicly is having an issue with it. Kendall Fuller, a team leader, was asked about it as well and said he doesn't have a public response. And if he has any reaction, he'll take it up with his coach, as necessary. Everybody was saying, everything. And Coach Del Rio, even to his credit, tried to say he tries to stay respectful in these kinds of things. But the phrase a dust up at the Capitol, was going to rub people wrong. And as soon as he said it, I think everybody kind of knew that's what's going to be right. The public reaction. And that's exactly what the public reaction has been so far, as videos and quotes are starting to come out about what he said.
We have video of those opening comments on @LO Commanders, and David and I think have both posted on our Twitter. But we do have that video, so you guys can go check out again his opening remarks, where he tried to divert it to football, but he did talk a little bit about the issue. Again, the dust up thing is going to be a problem. Now, Ron Rivera said he doesn't, not that he doesn't have a problem with it, but that he hadn't had a problem with anything that he had tweeted, and that even if he did have a conversation with Jack Del Rio, his defensive coordinator, he would not share it with us, which is understandable. I now wonder what the NFL, if anything, what the organization, David, is going to say. Yeah. I don't know.
I mean, that's certainly something that's possible. Is the organization could decide to come out and say something. And look, I put a comment up here. Obviously, it's not the user's real name, so I don't know what their real name is. But say, look, this is America, dude. And obviously, 100%, this is America, and Jack has every right to say how he feels. He has the right to say what he says. Nobody here, at least on the Locked On Commanders podcast, is trying to say, Jack Del Rio, don't you ever say something like that again. But you do not. Freedom of speech is not freedom from reaction. It's not freedom from repercussions. And the bottom line is, and look, on the moment they're on the turf, we knew that's not going to be taken very well by the masses. And we didn't tell the masses to not like it, right? It's being taken a certain kind of way. That is America as well. That is everybody's freedom to react to words that they hear. Neither of us are honestly really reacting to it. We're just kind of narrating on what's happening here. But the bottom line is that what Jack Del Rio said is rubbing people wrong. The team is being asked about it. Players so far are not saying anything publicly about it. But like you said, the league, the team, and in the future, players may decide to go ahead and talk about it, because one former player is absolutely talking about it.
Yeah, and that's Brian Mitchell, one of my colleagues at Audacy DC and 106.7 The Fan, and of course, one of the franchise greats and icons, and should be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He said this morning, Wednesday morning, on 106.7 The Fan on his show, quote, "I don't give a damn about Ron Rivera getting mad at somebody for having a practice collision," referring to what we talked about, Dyami Brown and Jeremy Reaves, "until he gets off his ass and addresses this damn idiot that he hired as a defensive coordinator. That's what I give a damn about." Mitchell said, quote, "Furthermore, and if he can't do it, then he's the wrong damn man to be leading this damn football team." That's a lot of damns. How do you expect anybody on that team to be straightforward when you've got a guy like that in the defensive coordinator position? Now, again, that is not David. That is not me. That is Brian Mitchell, who many of you remember as one of the all-time franchise greats, icons, and should be in the Hall of Fame, saying that about Jack Del Rio and saying that about Ron Rivera, not us.
Yeah, absolutely. And, a follow-up comment is being taken negatively because the media is telling everybody to take it negatively. I don't know who the media is in this. I understand that Brian was talking about this, honestly, before Coach Del Rio stepped up to the podium, and obviously he'll have more to say about it too. But listen, if anybody out there is feeling emotional towards a topic because somebody else is telling you to feel that way, I would recommend that you figure out your own opinions and how you believe into things. That's this media table's idea, is take information as it's being given, like we're delivering it here, create your own opinions and narratives based on your values, your experiences. And that's really the best thing I can say. I'm not going to defend Jack. I'm not going to defend the people that are mad at him either. Everybody is going to look at life and experiences in the way that you experience life. So that's really the best I can say.
Absolutely. And comment, as some of you are, many different ways you can leave us a voicemail, 301-615-3577. If we can get it on the air, if it's airable, we can do that. Or email us, lockedonwashingtoncommanders@gmail.com. Or again, leave a reaction. Just try and make it respectful. Try and make it mature and professional and responsible on our YouTube page, of course. As you watch this particular edition, plenty of ways for us to get your thoughts in as well. But thanks, guys, and Washington Commanders fans for making the Locked On Commanders podcast your first listen and your first view of the day. Now make the second listen and view the Locked On NFL podcast. Our national NFL experts and insiders keep fans dialed in with the biggest stories and the latest news from around the league, because an offseason doesn't equal a break in the action. Trust me, we know that. Follow Locked On NFL every day on the Audacy app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. We'll be back with another edition before the week is out. We'll react to Carson Wentz's press conference, his first since his introductory press conference. What did the quarterback have to say? And some lost nuggets from our notebooks. For David Harrison, I'm Chris Russell. If you're out and about, please be safe, be kind to one another, and thank you for joining us right here on the Locked On Commanders podcast.